And when you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Down From Above. My name is Natalie, and before we get into today's episode, just a quick disclaimer. The audio in this one is not the best. I did have some technical difficulties, and I did my best to try to repair it, but unfortunately, this is not uncommon when it comes to interviewing near-death experiencers. I'm not really sure why that is, but it happens. So if you're watching on YouTube, there's always captions, of course, on there that might help. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, there is an option where you can pull up the transcribed version of the episode and kind of read along if there's parts that you need some help understanding. So I do apologize for that, but besides that, the episode is awesome. So my guest this week is Peter Finnell, who in 2021 had a distressing near-death experience following emergency surgery, and he found himself in purgatory, which sounds terrible. And it was extremely traumatic for him, and it totally just turned his life upside down. But fortunately, he was able to find some peace through the medicine of ayahuasca. And he was so generous, and he brought some pictures, and he was really open about those experiences and how it positively impacted his life. So I'm excited for this one. Let's get right into it. Here is my guest, Peter.
Well, my name is Peter Finnell. I suffered what I believe is a near-death experience after what was to be a routine surgery went horribly wrong in July of 2021. I got into my 50s, and when we hit this age, we're supposed to go in for some preventative medicine testings. And they found some things, colonoscopy, and we went and did the surgery. Had it scheduled for July. A lot of warning signs were going on. I should have paid attention to. We had a tropical storm the day I had surgery. My air conditioner at the house went out. The water tank blew. Everything happened, and it was just wrong. But I still went through with it because I wanted to get this over with and get back to my life. I wanted to get this other polyp removed, find out if I had cancer or not, and move on. And that wasn't what was going to happen, though. I went in for what was a laparoscopic routine, sessile polyp full-enectomy. And it was all described as laparoscopic, routine, no worries. Day one after surgery, I was starving. I had to get something to eat. I asked the doctor, it's like, what am I allowed to eat? And he just giggled and said anything. And that seemed odd to me. You just had my intestines torn apart, sewed back together, and go have a salad, go eat a handful of nuts. It didn't make sense, so I got a milkshake. After the second day after surgery, I was refusing food again. And the nurse came in and he ordered some testing on me, some post-operative pre-discharge testing. That was never done. And third day after surgery, I was discharged and sent home. I wasn't feeling well. I was kind of out of it. I have a video on my phone. I must have dropped it and started recording. I saw Ben Affleck walking down the hallway in the hospital, and I was talking about it. It's like, number one, I'm not a Hollywood kind of guy. I don't pay attention to those people at all. And for me to be talking like that was completely out of character. Went home, no problem. Did it anyhow. Came home, chaos, air conditioners out. It's 100 freaking degrees in the house. Hot water hose on the tank blew up. I had all kinds of people coming over trying to fix things while I'm just now coming out of the hospital and delusional. I'm not doing well. So the next day, everything's taken care of. My girlfriend's calling the doctor's office. Something's wrong. You got to take a look. No. He's fine. Get him up, walk him around, feed him. 3 days of this. 3 days of phone calls. 3 days of reporting illnesses and being blown off and not examined and not taken seriously and being made to feel like it was all our fault, mine and my girlfriend. On the 4th day after discharge, I was trying to use the restroom. I'm not trying to be graphic or anything, but I vomited feces. Blood, it was feces, it was pus. It was the most disgusting thing any human being could do. I know 3 people in my life that have done that, and I'm the only one who's still alive. So this happens. I get my girlfriend out of bed, and I tell her we're going to the hospital. She calls the doctor's office, and they saw me, and I was adamant. If I got a colostomy bag, I would have to go back and see this man again. And I would have to continue to see this man until my intestines could be put back together. And I refused to do that. And after surgery, it comes in, everything's great. We did all this, we did all that, blah, 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 blah. Well, he's trying to discharge me again. This is, let's see, 10th, 14th. This is the 19th now. On the 7th, this all started on the 7th. This is now the 19th of July, I believe. And he's trying to discharge me. He did the exploratory, and during the exploratory, he cut my duodenum. Scars way up here in the middle of my chest. I was bloated. He cut my duodenal. Okay, I can't prove that he cut my duodenal, so I'm just going to say my duodenal was perforated. It caused a lot of internal bleeding. He repaired my colon and then sealed me up. All that free-floating waste that was inside of me, he washed out, but the bacteria are still in there. The germs are still in there. He sealed me back up. By the time he was getting ready to discharge me from the hospital the second time is when I had 6 liters. From the time I had the exploratory surgery to the time he was trying to discharge me, I built up 6 liters of fluid in my abdominal cavity. There's no way a competent physician would ever miss that. The fever, the white blood cell count, the amount of fluid, and the type of surgery that was done, a competent surgeon would have never missed that. These are my opinions. These are not facts. I'm going to state this in this manner. Here in Florida, we have what we call the free kill law. It allows physicians to decide whether who lives or who dies and who matters and who doesn't. How much effort they want to put into what case, and they can make that choice. There are no standards and practices put in other than the fact that you're not married and your children are over 25, nobody can sue. And even if they could sue in the state of Florida, a physician's only required to carry $250,000 in liability insurance. The man who comes in and unplugs your toilet has to carry $1 million, $2 million liability insurance. This whole event really, really fractured my being. I've ended up with what I call an acute case of PTSD. My faith and trust of 52 years was violated. The entire medical system has let me down. And I woke up in the ICU, what I believe was 7 to 14 days later. I came out of what I believe was my near-death experience in a different room. I didn't know where I was at. I could look across the hallway. I couldn't get out of bed. I'm strapped down because I've been ripping out catheters and IVs and freaking out and just dying, actively dying. And through that door, I ended up there. I came up out of my bed. I was in this doorway. And in front of me was nothing but darkness. And behind me, I could feel the hospital. I I had the sense of light behind me. I had the sense of action, things going on. And I stepped into the darkness. It was like I was on this stone wall, previously described as a castle keep. It's just this big stone wall, and there was a being there. I don't know who it was. I don't know what it was. And we're looking down over this apocalyptic wasteland. It's kind of all brown and sepia monotone-ish. It was purgatory. What I've come to learn is souls running around with no direction, really no place to go. They had no clue as to what was going on. It seemed like they were all in pain, and some of them were malignant. Some of them were just having fun with chaos. Others were lost and crying. And I can't remember having conversation with the being that was with me, but I remember getting information. It was just like, boom, here's your download, you know? And I know that I came out of there. That was purgatory. Purgatory is nothing more than the recycle center for souls. On the other side of this area, I could see the light. I could see and I was allowed to look into it, but I was never allowed to go into. I was allowed to see. And what I saw was not heaven and harps and angels and unicorns, but it was a clean society. It was what we were meant to be. And that's what we're striving to get to, is the information that I got. The purgatory, a lot of people aren't going to like this description of it. Souls that are connected to this planet, to this plane, to this human experience, souls that are truly connected here through vice, through malice, through pain, through karmatic payback, are recycled until they get it right. And if you don't get it right, you're coming back. Some choose to come back because they just enjoy this chaos. Others are forced to come back and relive it because they didn't get it right. It's hard to talk about because it re-triggers the memories. When I was standing in the doorway in the ICU, getting ready to step into purgatory, I knew that if I left the hospital, the light, the chaos, the noise, I knew if I left this, I was going someplace else. It wasn't like I was just stepping into a room, and I was out of body. My body was in the bed behind me, 20 feet away, and I'm standing in this doorway. And that's what I could sense. I knew I was laying down. I knew I was there dying. I knew what was on the other side of that, but I had to go. It was calling me, and I knew, like, in the hospital, like when I was in the hospital having hallucinations, it was during the height of COVID. So the COVID people had the secure rooms and they had the rest of us in curtains. So I'm in this curtain, and that's when I thought I was in the hallway. And I'm looking across the nurse's station and down a hallway. And when I'd seen things there, I later realized I was hallucinating. Like, I saw a nurse, and the nurse's station turned steampunk. It was like brass and copper tubing, industrial, beautiful welds. It was ornate. And I remember telling the nurse, the cute Anna, not the bad Anna, that her boyfriend, this other nurse who wasn't her boy, I created this illusion in my mind. And I told her that he could get a better job. He's a good welder. He could be someplace else. I had all of this in my mind. It was it was messages coming to me, and I could tell that these messages were hallucinations. The near-death experience wasn't a hallucination. My time in purgatory, the experience on the wall, the looking down across this purgatory, it was almost as if we were in a vast cavern, huge, vast cavern, and there was no light. Everything was all the same monotone color. There's a scene in Constantine with Keanu Reeves when he kills himself. The devil comes and grabs him. That is the backdrop. That is the closest comparison I can come up with to what I was experiencing. And some of the souls that were there, it wasn't like you saw people. It was a screaming spirit, malignant, coming by, like a banshee, creating chaos. And then there were other ones that were just sitting there suffering, not knowing why they couldn't move on, why they had to leave. And having an attachment to this earth isn't just addictions and vices. Having an attachment here can be a grandparent worried about a grandchild and wanting to come back, and knowing that their time in purgatory allows them to visit here. It's kind of like all-encompassing of many different theories of what happens after death. Not everything is the fallopian tube of love. I heard that on one of your episodes, and I just can't get that visualization out of my head. That was my experience. The biggest, the hardest part, aside from the PTSD and the complete and total mistrust of the entire medical system, is the fact that I died. The real me never came out of that hospital. I entered the hospital with an intention of starting a barbecue business. I was working hard on a business plan to come off of disability to get back into the real world. When I went into the hospital, I normally carried about 225 pounds, and I'm 6'3", 6'4". I'm a big guy. I used to drink 6-7 nights a week, 12-pack better a night. During those days, I'd smoke 2-3 packs of cigarettes. I would garvone steaks and pork and ribs, and I would sit down and have a 3,000 calorie meal at a barbecue. That's what barbecue is. Gorge. You work hard and you gorge at it. Now, I don't drink at all. I haven't had a cigarette or a drop of alcohol since July of 2021. I can no longer eat meat the way I used to. Whole cuts, chops, I can't digest them. I went out and bought $5,000 tow behind smoker. I'm determined to start my life over again. I put in all this work. I win trophies doing barbecue. I've got history in it, and I can't even enjoy it anymore. No, that's the level at which my life has been altered. And this is what I have to hold on to and work with. The confusion I felt after the near-death experience and the absolute panic I feel having to go deal with medical professionals and this PTSD and the triggers and my rage and all of this. What I'm learning is partially post-sepsis syndrome. And all of these feelings and emotions and trying to come to terms with what happened to me and being led in a direction, like talking to people about what happened to me. They started giving me suggestions, I mean, hey, why don't you try this? And hey, why don't you try it? Go to therapy. Well, that's clinical. I got PTSD. Clinicians can't do it. But you got. What about ketamine? Okay, so I started investigating some of the psychedelic ends of therapy, and still, it's a clinical situation. I'm not ready for that. To this day, I don't trust being in an altered state in a medical facility. And the research and the advice I was receiving from people, I ended up finding out a lot about ayahuasca and the ancient history of it all, the practices. And it led me to a place called Solterra. It's very sacred. It's very cathartic. It works. Where I couldn't trust medical staff. I can't trust being in an altered state. But I don't speak Spanish. I'm trusting people in the jungle, thousands of miles away, with my life and my healing more than I trust trained professionals. That's how desperate I was to get some healing. And I did. I went down to Costa Rica, when I started looking up ayahuasca, it was January of 2022 or 2023. And they had a lot of civil unrest in Lima, Peru. I was doing my research and found the location that called to me. It was Tarapoto, Peru. And it was just this isolated set of buildings in a jungle with an aerial shot. And I knew that's where I had to be. But when I started planning the trip, civil unrest kind of turned me off. So I booked anyhow. But I booked the retreat for Solterra in Costa Rica. I did a 7-day, 4-ceremony retreat, and it was beautiful. It was cathartic. The ayahuasca ceremonies, they do them in an arc. Like your first ceremony is set for diagnostic, engaging how you react to the medicine. Then your second ceremony starts your healing. Your third ceremony is your healing. And then your fourth ceremony is protection to leave with. In my case, I had some great ceremonies. My first ceremony, I didn't trust, so I passed out. In the medicine, sleeping. Those strange dreams, bad things. The second ceremony, and my spirit animals came to me. I was in the restroom purging, and I asked Mother Ayahuasca to get me out of the bathroom and back into the Maloka so I could receive my Icaro songs, my healers. And at that moment, Ayahuasca sent a serpent to me in the bathroom. The anaconda wrapped itself around my intestines, and my purge was over at that moment. I got up, I went back into the Maloka, I sat on my mat, and I went back into ceremony. And that's when I turned into a great white owl. And during that, and also I had a black jaguar come to me. Serpent left, and all these things were happening. And after the second ceremony, it was beautiful, it was cathartic. And then we're getting ready for a third ceremony. And one of the maestras, gentleman next to me, he spoke Spanish. So she called him over and she asked him in Spanish, "Hey, is he okay?" And points at me. He comes over, he asks me, he's like, "Okay." She wants to know if you're okay. I was like, "Yeah." It put me off a little bit. So I went through third ceremony and I had to relive my death. I was back in the ICU. I was fighting with Anna, the nurse. I was reliving my infection, the pain, the fear, the grotesqueness. And then I saw death. Death came stood over me, and I made him go away. My black Jaguar, we made him go away. They left. Fourth ceremony, we're getting ready for our protection. That's our Arcana ceremony. We're sitting around the pool waiting for our flower baths. And the healers are there and the facilitators are there. And I told one of the facilitators, I said, hey, man, she asked this about me, blah, 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 blah. He's like, well, what did she exactly say? I don't know. Why don't you ask her? So I want to know too. And yeah, it's like, well, why did you ask if Peter was okay during ceremony, the third ceremony? She goes, oh, well, during the second ceremony, I had seen he had a serpent with him. And I wanted to make sure that it was a serpent of protection and not malice. She saw the anaconda come to me in the bathroom and get me out. It was leading me to my healing. Serpents can carry two different meanings. There are vicious serpents, and then there are serpents for protection. That was a serpent of protection for me. And this was all in May of 2023. And when I got back from Costa Rica, I got an email stating that they had openings in Tarapoto, Peru. I got on the phone and I booked it. I was home a week and I booked my next retreat. And I went back. I went to Tarapoto for 4 more ceremonies. And the magic and the healing that comes from some of these ancient plant medicines is real. It's life-changing. And I don't know where I would be without it at this point. When you first come back out of the medicine, I mean, it changes you. My experience, I can't say everybody, I can't, I can only speak for my experience. There's a lot of commonalities that go along with it. Like everybody sees geometric shapes. Why? Don't know. It's the Shipibo patterns. Everybody sees it. And when you first come out of the medicine, you're happy. At least I was. I was enthralled. I was enlightened. I was amazed. And then after each ceremony and each set of ceremonies, you need to take time to integrate and process everything that you just had happen to you. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. My experience, I came out better. I came out better each time. When I came out of Costa Rica, I felt light and airy and like I was ready to move forward again. I did. I moved forward to Tarapoto, Peru. And I did 4 more ceremonies. And that's when I received the healing, the real healing. The knowledge that I've survived death twice. Once in the hospital and once in ceremony. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not even afraid of my manner of death because I know that's just a period of time now. I need to get back into the medicine. I started this healing process. And you come out of it and you're happy and enlightened. And then you come back into the world and you deal with the daily triggers and the daily anxieties. And you still try to integrate what you've learned through ceremony and medicine with what's happening in reality. And it can be done. Coming back and dealing with the triggers, like you said, the cashier at Starbucks or, the guy who cuts you off in traffic, or I've learned to respond instead of react. Hell, I've even had to walk away and do the deep breathing, the breath work. Okay, count through this. Yeah, no, I'm not going to jail today. No, not making me do it, buddy. So, I used to be 6'4", 250-pound construction worker, big beast. Get into a bar fight in a minute. Now I'm a more peaceful, calm, wise individual. I don't want to say approachable because I'm not real approachable all the time. Another thing that I learned through ceremony and integration of the information I've received, even in near-death experience, my medical research, the ayahuasca ceremonies, all of this information has led me to a purpose. I don't want to say that I deserved what I got, but I deserved what I got. I haven't always been a nice guy. Been in a lot of bar fights, got some battle scars, been married 4 times. I'm a veteran. I haven't lived a good life. And I have a purpose to come back here and change things. And that's why I received the information that I did the way that I did. There's no way I could have survived the perforated duodenal, the septic shock, the PTSD. There's no way I could have survived all of this and not had a purpose. I'm still learning what that purpose is, and I'm going to continue my journey. I'm beginning to receive, I don't want to say I'm beginning to receive messages like clairvoyant or anything like that, but the PTSD wakes me up at ungodly hours. I'll get up at 1 o'clock and I'll stay up for 4 hours. I'll get up at 3 o'clock and just be awake all day. And it's during those moments of meditation when I'm sitting by myself in the dark that I'm beginning to understand what happened to me. I'm beginning to understand that the near-death experience in the hospital and the near-death and the death experience that I had in ceremony, it almost feels like that when I'm in the medicine that I'm able to go back and forth between worlds. Like maybe that I'm meant to go into that world and, I don't know, bring back information. But I don't fear it. Hell, I want to go back to it. I want to be able to go back and forth in between through ceremony, through medicine. It doesn't matter. Through meditation. I just know that's why I survived it. One of the things that I picked up, like the Shipibo people that bring us to ayahuasca and give us these ceremonies and sing Icaros for our healing, they do these patterns, these geometric patterns. It almost looks like a circuit board, right? And it's just freehand stitching. And none of it's perfect. None of it's, super symmetrical. There's always little flaws and little things that don't match up. But as a whole picture, it's a beautiful piece of art that took hours and hours and hours to design and do. And the imperfections in it and the whole thing is a massive piece of art. It's beautiful. And this is one of the things I learned there was just like the Shipibo people doing this needlework and stitching, we are a thread. In our life is that tapestry. And every time that needle pierces that tapestry and you pull that through, you're making contact with another person, or they're making contact with you. They're influencing your life and they're becoming part of your tapestry. And we go through this process of putting this tapestry together that is our life. And when we start to see the artwork in it, we're in our later years and we can look back and we can say, oh, I could have done this one this way, but perfect right where it is. Or I couldn't put an extra stitch over here. It's just the way it's supposed to be. My life, that thread and this tapestry is every synchronicity that we've ever gone through, and it has brought us to this art. It has brought us to the beauty of what life was supposed to be. And man, I'm right there. It's like, oh, the human experience, the repeating of souls, the synchronicities. We're meant to be better than what we are. We are meant to clear our karmic debt in this human experience. And if we don't clear it, we're doomed to repeat it. I want to walk away from this planet and this existence with zero attachments. I know that my children are the best human beings they can possibly be, and they don't need me as adults. They may want my advice, and they may want some of my wisdom, but they don't need me. If you look at the first interview that I did post-traumatic experience, I'm a wreck. I am an absolute wreck. I had nothing figured out. I got nothing but confusion. But I got to start the process of healing and figuring it out. And, I came out of it confused. I came out of it hurt, rage. I mean, I cried every day just for no reason. I'd start thinking of things and boom, tears would fall on my face. And I didn't learn what had happened to me and how to deal with it and how to come to terms with it until I found the medicine, until I found ayahuasca. I did the interviews, and I read all the comments after the interviews, and those comments led me in directions. Those comments, the viewers of these podcasts, with the information that they give back to people, will send them on the right path. And that's how I got the information to learn how to deal with my situation. It put me on a path of investigating dark night of the soul, where I went in the hospital, one human being, and came out somebody completely freaking different and had no understanding of it. So it's taken time, it's taken research, it's taken input from a lot of people. It's taken me fighting with a lot of people, telling them to fuck off because I've heard the same advice 9,000 times. It's a process. That's an individual process. My calling was to ayahuasca. Somebody else's calling may be to psychotherapy. It may be to antidepressants. It may be to religion. Mine was to the jungle, and it worked for me. Everybody's going to have to find what works for them, and I really hope they do. As far as getting in touch with me, you can get in touch with me at chefdaddy1968@gmail.com. The next legislative session, I may be spending some time in Tallahassee screaming about this free kill law. It's got to change. I'm glad we finally were able to get together. I really appreciate your platform.
All right, everybody, that's it for this week's episode. A huge thank you to my guest, Peter, for coming on and sharing with us. But listen, I want to know your guys' thoughts on the hellish experience, or the idea of distressing NDEs as a whole. I want to know your thoughts. Do you believe that it's a place that we go to? Do you believe our actions here on earth determine whether or not we go there? Or is it our intent behind our actions that determines that? It's a very complex one. I do understand that, but I want to know your thoughts and opinions. You can share with me in the YouTube comment section, on Facebook, or any of the social media posts that I'll be creating about this episode. You can contact me there as well. Or you can email me at downfromabovepod@gmail.com if you have an experience that you would like to share on the show. Again, a big thank you to you and my guest, and we will see you next week.